Hi, we're back with Deep Images. I'm Henry Covert. We cover all kinds of movies from all kinds of different angles. With me is co-hosts Justin Cotton and CF Roberts, and panelist supreme Bill Mulligan. And we're covering strange love stories. That's a pretty wide gamut. But Justin is going to talk about one that is probably one of the best known that we're going to be covering. So take it away,
Yeah,
Justin.
thanks, Henry. Well, the film's called The Crying Game, and it's a 1992 film, director Neil Jordan, Irish director. And the main cast are Stephen Ray, an Irish actor who plays the main character Fergus, otherwise known as Jimmy when he's in London during that part of the film. Jay Davidson, who was a newcomer, who played Dell, um, a singer at a bar in looks like the East End of London somewhere. Forrest Whitaker makes an appearance, surprisingly, as a British paratrooper who's stationed in Northern Ireland. And he's in the first sort of half hour of the film. His name's Jodie. There's a good turn by Miranda Richardson, who plays Judith or Jude. She's an IRA fighter who tricks Forrest Whitaker's character, the soldier, into a liaison, and he's then at a fairground at the start of the film and he is then taken hostage by IRA paramilitaries or IRA terrorists and held hostage nearby. But I'll get to that. Um, so the film's really it's well received on Rotten Tomatoes with a 95% review score. It's around 75% for the audience on IMDb,
Hmm.
but certainly the critics loved this film at the time.
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's available on Amazon as well.
yeah.
And it was
It's not
nominated for
on Blu-ray yet, so it's kind of in limbo as far as home video. But continue.
yeah. Well, I was Dwayne was kind enough to send this to me via the Dropbox, so I
Very
watched
good.
it via Dwayne a couple of days ago. But I
Dwayne
have
is
seen
our
it at the
producer,
cinema.
everybody, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah, so thanks, Dwayne.
Thanks,
But
Dwayne.
I did watch it at the cinema some time ago, probably in about 1993.
Wow, first
So I
run.
hadn't seen it for a long time. This film. So it's got like six Oscar nominations in about 93, but it won one of them, which was for the best original screenplay for Neil Jordan. It's best known in public consciousness for a plot twist, a major plot twist that happens about halfway through. And when it was had its American release, because I think the film didn't do so well initially in the UK, but when it was released in America, they actually turned the plot twist into a marketing ploy that and asked the film critics not to reveal what the actual the plot twist was.
Yeah,
Although
it's
for
good
some
that
reason
this
I
was
went into the movie
pre-internet.
knowing what the plot twist was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they made a bit of basically a bit of a marketing ploy out of the fact that there was this plot twist. It's really about essentially about identity and the ambiguity that can come with identity. Um, and what if your so-called identity, whether it's as an Irish national or as your sexuality or your race, what if that somehow conflicts with your morality or your nature?
Mhm.
Um, so the film deals quite effectively. It's a complex film. It deals with politics, sexuality, and race. There is some humour throughout the film as well, though. It's not all sort of doom and gloom. For example, when Fergus travels to London to try and track down Dal, who he knows was in a relationship with Forrest Whitaker's character, he finds Dal works at a hairdresser's and frequents this bar called the Metro. And there's a good turn by Jim Broadbent as Cole the bartender, and
Yeah.
at certain scenes, Dell won't speak directly to Fergus, but will only talk to him through the bartender. So Cole, can you tell him that I have a margarita? And she says she has a margarita, and so he conveys what is to be said.
I don't think Fergus was ready. I thought this errand he was running for Jody to respect his
Yeah,
last wishes. I don't think thought his girlfriend was going to be so hot to him. That she,
exactly. Yeah, he did. He just
he was
yeah, and
he was a
he
little
sort of
taken
goes in there
aback, you know.
to say the least. Yeah, and he goes and he goes into there with his eyes shut. Basically, well, you sort of feel sorry for Fergus because he's sort of a bit of an ingenue. What happens in the second act of the film? But anyway, other humour is when Fergus first goes into the bar in London. They say, what'll your drink be?" And he says, "I'll have a bottle of Guinness," as if to say he doesn't trust the bartender to pour a Guinness properly.
Mm.
Um, and also, Dell asks Fergus if he's Scottish, even though his accent is clearly Irish. He says, "Oh, you're from Scotland." So
Yeah.
that's the sort of running gag throughout the film. So when
Right.
Miranda Richardson's IRA terrorist comes into the film towards the end, Dell says to Fergus, "Oh, is she from Scotland as well?" So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so there is some humour in it. And there's also a tale of the scorpion and the frog crossing the river, which comes up a couple of times in the film, and it's originally told by Jody to his captor or one of his captors, which is Fergus. And he says, "I think you're the only one here who has a kind nature." He says, "Well, how do you know this?" He says, "But you guys are going to kill me anyway. I know that." And he says, "Well, you don't know that, so how can you know?" And then Jody tells Fergus the story of the scorpion and the frog. And that story is that the scorpion wants to get across a river, and he asks the frog if the frog can swim across and the scorpion can be on the frog's back. And the frog says, "No, I won't do that because you'll just sting me in the back, and then I'll be gone."
Mhm.
And the scorpion says, "No, I won't do that. It wouldn't be in my interest to do that because if I was to sting you in the back while we're crossing the river, then we would both drown." So anyway, the frog then agrees to take the scorpion across the river, and two-thirds of the way across, he suddenly feels a sharp sting in his back. And he turns around and says, "Well, why did you sting me? Now I'm going to drown and so are you." And the scorpion says, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. It's in my nature."
Right. Exactly.
Um, but then Jody turns it around and says to Fergus, "But your nature is that you're kind." And he at one scene when Fergus draws the short straw and has to actually execute Jody because of the British won't agree to the prisoner swap. They assign
Bastards.
Jody to execute him because he's the one who's been kind to him and lifting up his the black mask that's over his head and so forth.
Mm.
Um, Jody kind of sort of half suspects that Fergus is going to let him go, but I don't think he was. But he makes a run for it, and Fergus doesn't want to shoot him in the back. But unfortunately, Jody dies anyway because he runs onto the road and is then mown down by these British armoured vehicles and killed.
Mm.
But prior to this, and at the same time, the British helicopters obviously know where the IRA base is in this sort of greenhouse type setup,
Mhm.
and they fire rockets and blow the place to smithereens. Um, but you kind of see the leader and also Miranda Richardson's Jude kind of crawl out of a side window, so you suspect that they've actually escaped, as did Fergus. Um, but also prior to that, Fergus had asked if Jody had asked Fergus, had shown him a photo of his girlfriend back in London, which happens to be Dell, who's also of West Indian extraction, and asked
She's
if he can go and
biracial,
find her. Biracial, yeah. Asked if he can Fergus can go to London and try and find her and just say to Dell uh, that Jamie was thinking of her when he died. I don't know if he asked him to go and look after her, but he says at least go and tell her that I was what happened and that I was thinking of her when I died.
yeah.
So that's where he ends up. He goes to London. He starts working on a building site. He's cut his hair so he looks a bit different. Um, and he goes into the hairdressers first and meets Dell. And then he says his name is Jimmy, which is clearly an alias. It's not his real name. Sounds a bit Scottish, actually, that name. And then he also goes to see her at this bar, the Metro, and you can see there's a connection between Dell, who's very beautiful, and the only giveaway of what's going to happen next, I suppose, is the hands. When she's doing a song, you can see that the hands are a little bit
The,
uh,
the,
bigger than normal for a woman.
I
And
wanted, I
that
wanted
was
to, I
one.
wanted to interject what you thought about this. Don't you feel like there's a clue uh in the scene where Fergus needs to urinate and he's got tied up and he can't do it, so he wants
Yeah,
Jody wants to urinate and he wants
well,
Fergus to help him,
yeah,
and Fergus doesn't want to hold his wee wee, and then he's like, "It's just a piece of meat, mate." it don't
Yeah,
matter, and
exactly.
I thought,
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
yeah. Well, that's right. And there's a bit of banter about that. It's actually in one of the other funny scenes, actually, even though it's in a very grim situation. When he can't, his hands are tied, so he can't actually undo his pants to go for a leak. But so he asks Fergus to basically hold his willy while he does it,
yeah, that's what.
and then also to, can you hold my arms behind so that I can lean forward when I'm going for a wee, so that I don't piss on myself. And I read a review somewhere where saying, was this a metaphor possibly for anal sex as well? So I think there's certainly an ambiguity about Jodie's character as well, and
Yeah,
there's sort
there's
of a
hints.
friendship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's a friendship that develops, even short-lived friendship between Jodie and Fergus, who's one of the IRA terrorists, albeit with a kind heart. And then anyway, so they go to the bar, and anyway, by this stage, you can tell that for some reason Fergus is hanging around the bar near where Dell was, and she said, "Oh, I just gave this guy a haircut an hour ago, and now he's in the bar," sort of thing. Um, and at one point, the next night, then they're at the same bar, the Metro. Cole says, "Oh, by the way, there's something I've got to tell you about her," and he says, "Yeah, what is it?" And he goes, "I'm going to tell you that," and then yet this music starts up. And he goes, "She's on," and uh, and then it pans out to this to Dell coming out on stage and doing a rendition of the song called "The Crying Game." So Cole never actually gets to tell tell Fergus what he was going to tell him,
mm,
and eventually there's a scene where they're about to be romantic. I think obviously by this stage. Fergus has developed some feelings for Dell as well, but not realizing the truth.
mm.
And she comes out in a robe and then reveals the robe, and then the camera pans down and reveals, and yes, in fact, Dell has a penis. So it was a fairly shocking reveal back in 1992. I don't know if it would be as shocking now. Although I think for an unsuspecting heterosexual like Fergus was, well, we assume he's heterosexual. Um,
He
Even
is.
today, I think there might be the same kind of shock potentially in a real situation. Anyway,
Well,
that's
that's
what I
kind
think.
of the whole. I think that's
Yep.
kind of the thrust of the film is that he is
Yep.
heterosexual, but we're talking about a love that forms that transcends their physical identities. That's just.
Yeah, and this is where it comes into the strange love theme, I think, because there is
Mm,
a form of love that develops, and
hmm
yes, he reacts violently and sort of pushes her away, even hits her actually,
hmm
so that Dell has a bit of a blood lip. Dell is kind of a bit of a forlorn character at times, and is her whole existence seems to be to try and find someone who will love her back. Although she
Yeah.
did have that with Jodie, but she's been aware for the last 3 weeks that he's dead or died while he was on duty in Ireland. In actual fact, there's also some sort of symbolism about the game of cricket because after Jodie has been killed, Fergus keeps having flashbacks about Jodie running up and bowling a ball in cricket wearing these cricket
Oh,
whites.
yeah, I remember that.
It happens quite a few times throughout the film. Um,
And those
and
clothes come in. That's another foreshadowing.
that's right. And just after this reveal scene, when to Fergus's great shock, Dell is revealed to be a man and biologically, um, then it pans to uh, a smiling figure of Jodie Forrest Whitaker walking towards the camera in his cricket whites, and he's sort of tossing a ball up like this with a big grin on his face.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay.
that was kind of humorous as well. I thought.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Um, but of course, to cut a long story short, basically, within 24 hours, Fergus has felt a lot of remorse about this, and he's leaving messages outside the door of Dell saying, "I didn't mean to hit you, and I'm so sorry," sort of thing. So he feels a lot of remorse because in fact, he's actually a good person. I think is central to the film. Uh, and anyway, so she comes to the building site, and he's got an asshole of a boss. He tells him where to go, but Dell turns up at the building site and gets lots of wolf whistles and so forth. Again, none of them realizing Dell is actually a man.
I've got to
Um,
say, I've got to say, I absolutely, I think that whole sequence is it's hilarious and it's so romantic, and so it's just like, to use a term that people used to use besides the real meaning, it's pregnant with uh feelings that are coming up and the way they're kind of circling each other. Even though now he knows the truth, she summons the confidence to just go ahead and try to pursue him now. And
Yeah,
I thought it was incredible from a
yeah.
romantic
So
story viewpoint. I thought it was incredible.
that at first she didn't forgive him for what had happened, but then by the time she turns up at the building site, it's clear that she has, and she has a they have a cup of tea and so forth on the building site. So everything looks like it's headed in the right direction. But then when he goes back to his apartment, and when he turns on the light, lo and behold, Miranda Richardson's character Judith from IRA is sitting at a desk. I don't know how she got in, but anyway. Um,
She's a
and
spy, man.
prior to that, there was this really strange boyfriend of Dell's, this sort of sleazy guy who used to hang around around the bar, and
Uh,
basically
uh,
he got sort of beaten up a little bit by Fergus, and he was a coward, so he took off, you know. But then a few times after that, or a couple of times after that, this sort of silver BMW car would come flying down the road and just miss them, like it was trying to run them down,
mm.
and they just assumed it was this guy Dave, who was doing this, the jealous ex-boyfriend.
But
But
it
as it
was the
turns out,
yeah.
it was actually Adrian Dunbar's character who was the leader of the IRA in the opening sequence.
Gotcha.
Um, and so he was actually driving the car. So the IRA are basically very annoyed at Fergus and the fact that he skipped town. And I think perhaps he was tried in absentia and found to be a traitor because of what had happened at the Glass House Hideaway.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe that he'd alerted the paratroopers to where they were. This, of course, is not what happened. But
Yeah, he didn't mean for any of that,
anyway,
did he? Yeah.
Adrian Dunbar's character, Peter Maguire, and also Judith come across to London to try and track him down, because Judith says, "Well, I didn't want to assume that you were a traitor. I wanted to give you one last chance." But she says, "But by the way, we're both aware of the young black woman that you're seeing." And so basically, they say, unless you do what we say you should do, some harm may befall this young black woman that you're seeing. And they want him to take a gun and go and assassinate a judge who's coming out of a courthouse at a particular time the next day. And Fergus says, "Well, this is a bit of a suicide act because I can't get into the building and because of its security, so I'll have to try and gun him down on the street." And they say, "Well, that's what you've got to do to basically make it up to the IRA." And he says, "Do I have a choice?" And she says, "Oh, you've always got a choice. But of course, if he chooses no, then some harm may befall Dell." So next thing you know, he's asked Dell to come to the hairdressing salon, and he asked to chop off her hair. So he gives Dell a haircut so she looks like a boy, and says, "You're going to
Somewhat.
come and stay at this hotel somewhere else, and I want you to wear these cricket whites," because she's kept the cricket whites that Jodie used to wear. So she doesn't know what's going on, and she's very confused about all of this.
I love that scene where he's getting ready to cut her hair and he's telling her, you love me, will you do anything for me? And she's like, yes, he's like, okay, trust me, I'm gonna cut your hair. She's like, she trusts him, and so she lets him do it, and it's like
Yeah,
the
because they
next
do by
level
then
of their relationship, kind of.
they do have kind of a love relationship by this
Oh
point,
yeah,
even though I don't think he's sold on the idea of having sex with her, but
right, right.
I think he's primarily a heterosexual character, but
There's
he does
still a romance going on.
still a romance. She loves him, and yeah, and he loves her in a sense, in that he would, yeah, he wants to, he'd do a lot for her to try. He certainly would help her to survive what the incident that's developing.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, the hit, he doesn't turn up for the hit. I forget the reason why he didn't show up, but something happened to delay him. Can you remember what it was? Um,
No. Even though I
anyway,
watched it not
uh,
long ago.
yeah, yeah. So he gets delayed. I think it's oh, that's right. Sorry, I should have remembered this. This is getting towards the end of the film. So he actually he comes clean one night, and he tells Dell, when Dell's got ravingly drunk, because she doesn't really know what's going on. She's dressed as a boy with a short haircut, wearing the cricket uniform,
Hmm.
and so she's very drunk. And while she's drunk, um, and by this stage they're back at her apartment. She went back to her own apartment, so they're back at her apartment. Um, and he spills the beans and says, this is why I keep asking about your ex-boyfriend, because I actually knew him, and this is what happened, and I'm responsible for his death.
Mm,
But Dell's so drunk she doesn't really take it on, but she hears it, but she doesn't really take it on at the time.
mm,
But the next morning, when they're both lying on the bed, she gets up and she grabs these black straps and ties his hands and his legs to the each side of the bed, so he's basically trapped. And she says, "Well, now I've thought about what you told me last night, and I now know you're responsible for Jodie's death." So she sort of becomes enraged to the point of insanity. Um, in the meantime, the hit on the judge has gone wrong. Adrian Dunbar's character said, "Well, this asshole Fergus is not going to show up. I'm going to do it myself." So he grabs a small submachine gun and rushes at the judge. Um, doesn't really get a direct hit, but gets shot himself and killed. And Miranda Richardson's character just drives away at breakneck speed in the BMW. She then shows up at Dell's apartment because they've obviously worked out where that is. And she's assuming that Fergus is going to be there, so she's gone to basically kill Fergus. But as she walks through the door, there's a bit of a curtain that shields the bed area from the rest of entrance to the apartment. So in the meantime, poor old Fergus is strapped to the bed, but Dell has found his gun, the gun that was given to him by Miranda Richardson's character to assassinate the judge.
mm-hmm.
So Dell then starts throwing shots through the curtain and hits Judith and kills Judith um,
I cheered when that
in a
happened.
rage.
I really did.
Yeah, well, so did
I
I.
despise
And in
that
fact,
character.
I think what yes, yeah, and I think she almost looked a bit like with that bowl cut because she's got a different look when she
Yeah,
appears in London. She's got
yeah,
this sort of Michelle Pfeiffer esque look with a sort of like one of those 1980s hairstyles.
yeah.
Um, she looked a bit like Michelle Pfeiffer's character in Scarface, but it's also now a red color. And I saw an interview where Miranda Richardson said, "I thought I looked a bit clunky in the last act of the film. It looked more like a samurai than I did a IRA terrorist." Anyway, that's what she said. So it was a bit of a samurai hairstyle.
Isn't it
But anyway,
weird? Isn't it weird that they do a bait and switch in the merchandising, and they put her look when she's got the black bob wig. They put her
yeah,
look
the Black Bob.
on as the
Yeah,
gun, like it's about her, and the movie is not about
yeah.
her. So it's like totally messing with
Well,
you.
she's at best a third string character in the film, although she's seen as the most villainous character,
She's
I
the
think.
yeah, she's
I
antagonist.
But I
do
think
like how
maybe
Go ahead, man.
I was just saying I like how
sorry,
in these movies, so many English movies, the IRA are portrayed as almost superhuman. You know, like the Long Good Friday. It doesn't matter that if you yourself are a criminal and have the mob behind you, if the IRA puts you in your sights, you might as well just blow your brains out before they do
They
it.
got
It's
Mountbatten, so
interesting.
yeah, it
Yeah, I
does.
don't think there's anything equivalent in American films. Maybe the Russian mob or something, but even they will fall,
Russian Mob
down
is
to
turning
one
up in a
guy.
lot of action television series.
They
I've
turn up a lot, but they also all it takes is one John Wick or whatever to take them on, and they go down like dominoes.
Daredevil
But the
took him out.
IRA is just scary as hell in these films. Like, ugh, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think there was also the film was trying to say, I think that the real woman, the main character, the real woman in the film, which is really Miranda Richardson's character, is a villainous character, whereas the woman who's not really a woman is more virtuous. So they're kind
Oh
of
yeah,
making that point, I think,
absolutely.
as well as a sympathy point or an empathy point for Dell's character. And anyway, so another act of selflessness by Fergus is that he takes the rap for the death of Judith and says that he shot her, not Dell. And so the closing act of the film is Dell looking dressed to the nines, and she's visiting a prison during visiting hours, and she goes to a desk and speaks to Fergus, and they're still effectively a couple because she's counting the days until when he gets out. And he said, "Well, you don't need to do that. Why are you waiting for me to get out?" And she said, "Well, you took a murder rap for me. Why wouldn't I do that?" And for some reason, he then tells her the story about the scorpion and the frog, and that's how the film closes. to the tunes of "Stand by Your Man" is the
Stand
final
by your
song at
man.
the end. There's some great songs at the start, at the
It's so
very
it's
start, and
so
the very end.
facetious. Having that through
Yeah.
the song is so facetious. Uh,
So
the end of
the
that
very
movie,
first scene.
I go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say the very first scene in the film is a shot of a river in Ireland, Northern Ireland, with a bridge, and then a fairground in the background. And the song is a very good soul version of "When a Man Loves a Woman."
Oh
So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's that's the opening song, and then at
a
the
great
very end
song.
in the jail, in the jail scene, visiting, there's "Stand by Your Man," sort of a
Tammy
country
Wynette.
version.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the music choice at the very start and the very end of the film were great as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so look, it's got a bit of humor, but it's also a lot of pathos in the film as well, and it's telling a lot of complex things about ambiguity of identity and what happens if your identity conflicts with your morality or your nature. Because even for Fergus, he was committed obviously to the Irish Republican cause, but that conflicted with his morality when he was asked to basically treat Jody like a like a caged animal,
Hmm.
and then when he was asked to execute him, he found that very difficult as well.
Hmm.
So, and eventually he does turn against the IRA by, uh, as you can see, he says he wants no more part of it by the time he's gone to London. And then there's of course the sexuality angle as well. And so people say, well, the main thing they remember about the Crying Game is the gender reveal halfway through, but obviously there's a lot more complexity and a lot more layers to the film than just that.
Yeah, it's really more
Um,
of a it's like a thriller, action thriller drama, but it definitely has that romance, kind of thing in it, and the twist. But
Well, it's definitely a strange romance, and that was one of the first films I thought of when I was trying to think of
oh yeah,
the good film, which I hadn't seen for years, for
that's an
this
excellent
particular thing.
choice. I
So
saw.
if any of you guys haven't seen it, it will be in the Dropbox for our movie group as well, because Dwayne
Okay,
put it in there during the week. So yeah,
have
you
you
can
seen
just
it,
download
Chuck?
it.
I no. Of course, I know all about it. I've heard about it for
Bill's
years.
seen it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
I have to say it's one of my favorite movies, and I do
Yeah,
think
it's good.
it's I I do think it's romantic, just it's like they're a couple, and then when she says something, I forgot what she says to him. Is it "I love you," or she says something, very intimate. And he's like, "Don't say that," and he's deflecting her, but he's enjoying it at the same time, and you can tell that. And it's like, okay, he's never gonna have sex with her. Well, not in the way that maybe she would want to, but um, they're still gonna be together, and I just think that's such a powerful story. I think it's amazing, and really,
Yeah.
it did make a lot of waves, and it does have so many layers in it. And you're right, it does have a lot of humor, a lot of characterization that's really, really deep and well
Well,
developed.
the acting's really good as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
And in a strange case of life imitating art, the main actor in the film, the main character, was played by Irish actor Stephen Rea. I think that's how you pronounce
right,
REA.
Stephen Wright.
Um, Stephen Ray, yeah. So he was married for many years, including when this film was made until about 2003 to an actual Irish terrorist. So
Oh
called,
man,
yeah.
Wow.
So Dolores Price. So I sent you that link, Henry, where
oh
you can
okay,
see
I didn't
him.
make that connection.
Yeah. So he's carrying the coffin, right, for his ex-wife because I think he divorced her in about 2003, but she's suspected of, well, she was an IRA member and suspected of involvement in this or that.
Oh
Um,
man.
I thought that was a strange case of life imitating art in a
Yeah, I
sense,
never knew
actually.
that. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So that was interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's my review of the film. Certainly, if you haven't seen it, it's probably worth checking it out and seeing how you feel. See if you can last through it. But I think it's a pretty good film.
Mm.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't seen it, and see how it see how it messes with your expectations about gender and sex and romance, and And then you can
Yeah,
put it in the context of now. Like, what if it came out now? It would be, in a way, it would still be shocking, but it wouldn't be. I don't know. It's like things have changed so much in the culture.
yeah. Now
So
the big thing I remember, of course, the gender reveal, was like the big secret, and it was hyped as like, don't tell anyone about the big
right, it's like
secret
a
of the
horror
crying
movie. You
game,
don't.
and I remember that vividly, and even back then, I knew what it was, and
Right.
just my family saw it, and several members of my family saw it, and they're all just like, yeah, it's pretty obvious the first time you see her, she's a guy,
I don't agree with
you know.
that. In
So,
my
Yeah.
opinion, I think she's
Mm.
Not
totally.
to me, it was.
well, you wouldn't
I
at
think she's
first,
totally a
but
hot woman to me. The what I'm
yeah,
seeing. I mean, until she
Yeah.
takes her clothes off.
Yeah, it's not. I think I saw it this time, but that was because I already knew anyway. So I think that colors your perceptions. But as I say, the hand when she was singing the crying game, the hands look quite big. So that's a giveaway. Also,
There's
the
a
Adam's apple.
there's
Yeah,
there's another element to this whole thing with Miranda Richardson being the
mm,
iconic person on the poster. She's I don't want to say in love, but she's into Fergus. They've had sex before,
that's
and
right. Yeah,
she has her hold on him. She's using the IRA thing as an excuse to keep her in his life and control him because she wants to be with him. And she's insanely jealous when she sees this, girl, boy, whatever. Um, and I really believe that the irony is that this woman who tries to get all sexy and seduce men and kill them uh, is really less of a woman than Dill is, in my opinion.
mm,
I really
yeah.
think, as far as what you think of a woman being, like somebody tender and loving. I mean, these are stereotypes, but um, I think that irony is incredible. I've always thought that. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but
Well, even when her hair was cut towards the end of the film and dressed in the cricket whites, she still didn't look really much like a boy. I thought
she's
she still
cute.
looked still
She
looked
could
feminine.
she
Yeah,
could be in it. I've read a lot about Jay Davidson, but Jay Davidson is a kind of mysterious character. I mean, he did go by
retired after Stargate. Yeah.
yeah, after Stargate, he pretty much retired from acting, and then he did some other stuff online. But um, he could be intersex. I mean, I don't mean that he has both organs, but he could have some female hormones naturally. I mean, I had a
Well, if
friend
you
who
if
was
you
I
if
had a
you look,
friend who was like that years ago. First trans person I knew.
yeah, yeah. If you look up Jay Davidson online now, he looks more mannish now than he did back in sort of 1993. It's quite a big difference. But back then, Jay Davidson was like an androgynous model who then went
Yeah, I
into
mean,
acting.
yeah, and it's really funny to see how things have changed. And this is a controversial take. I'll try to keep it kind of brief and not too inflammatory. But you notice Jay Davidson after the movie or whatever, walking around being Jay Davidson, but still looking like a hot woman, uh, referred to himself as he. Uh,
Mm,
just like Divine did, and just like Lou Reed's girlfriend Rachel. Well, actually,
mm.
they referred to her as she, but that was kind of the flip side. But now, if a man becomes more feminine, he immediately says he's a woman and only wants to
Is
be
she?
called she.
Yeah,
So that has
yeah, yeah.
drastically altered people
Well,
have
at the end, at,
perception.
at the yeah, at the time, because I was reading a review about this yesterday as well, the term transvestite was often used. And at the time, when the film was made, Jay Davidson said, "No, I'm not a transvestite. I'm a gay male. I'm a gay man." So that's the way
Right.
Jay
He's
Davidson
a gay man
saw himself. Yeah,
who's a gay
yeah,
man who in modeling and acting
mm,
played um what they now would call transgender characters.
mm,
Because back then, if you said the transvestite, that had one meaning, which didn't mean you were necessarily gay or wanted to be a woman. And then transsexual usually meant that you were going to go ahead and have the sexual reassignment surgery.
yeah,
Um,
mm.
Nowadays, things are really there's all these words and terms floating around for them, but there's still a lot of obfuscation. And I personally think it should be a personal thing. Unfortunately, it's not
Yeah.
anymore. It's a community media thing, and that I think that's a change for the worse. I mean, I know, and some people think, well, there's more awareness now about trans people. There's more understanding, but I also feel like due to the media and online communities, I feel like a lot of trans people don't have the space and time really to understand who they are really or what they are, especially when
Yeah.
they're really young and they go into this. And I just I take a step back from all that. I'm not judging. I just
Yeah.
I think it's a step backward in my opinion, not forward, and that's just me. Yeah.
Well, there's almost like a tendency to pigeonhole people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas
Right.
I think this film is very much about not pigeonholing.
Hmm.
So I don't know how this film would play. I know it's 1992, but how it would play with the modern transgender movement, I don't know
I
if they
know.
would think it was fully consistent in some ways. Yeah.
I wanted to say
Well, I
that
don't know, maybe.
well they would yeah, oh, okay. I wanted to say that shortly after that, David Cronenberg's movie M Butterfly came out, which had the same twist. But you know, it came out. They stole the thunder from Cronenberg. Cronenberg didn't hang as much on the twist as Neil Jordan did. But when I saw In Butterfly in the theater, I did believe it was a woman at first. Because I wasn't intimately familiar with the actor. I knew his name. I knew he was Asian, but that you know, I didn't know he played this character. I thought it was a woman. And then as it goes on, I started to kind of, yeah, okay, yeah. And then once you kind of figure it out, but the main character, Renee Gallimard, played by Jeremy Irons, he is still delusional. I mean, he has anal sex with her and believes he got her pregnant, even though I mean, he knows, but he won't, he's in insane denial. And then when they're captured for the conspiracy stuff. Have any of y'all seen this movie?
No.
Bill has.
No.
And
It's
Butterfly.
based on the old opera, right? Loosely.
Well, the opera's used as a plot point. Yeah, the main she plays Madame Butterfly on stage, the main character. She is a spy, but it's really a man played by John Lone who is a spy. And when they're captured, uh, Jeremy Irons is like freaked out. Um, but John Lone takes all his clothes off and shows, hey, look, basically I'm a man biologically, but I'm still your butterfly. And you have to decide as a viewer, has the John Lone character, because I can't remember her name, really fallen in love with Jeremy Irons for real? And that's what she's trying to say, or is this still kind of a mind fuck? I mean, and then Jeremy Irons' character, he doesn't know either. So in the end, he goes mad and stages this. He dresses as a geisha and has an Oriental ritual and suicide. I, Renee Gallimard. And I'm like, wow. So, it's weird. At the time, I compared the two movies, but I hadn't seen Crying Game, so I really didn't know what I was talking about. But I didn't really want to see it at first because it was really hyped, like badly around people I knew. I was like, all right, whatever. And I'm not into Boy George and all and then when I rented it, I was like, oh my God, this is a masterpiece. I was dumb. You never know.
I think Boy George does a version of that song, "The Crying Game,"
He
as well.
does,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
At the time. Yeah.
I think it helped
Yeah.
his career,
Yeah.
post Culture Club career, a little bit. Well, all right, guys, we're going to wrap up this amazing episode. It's good talking about this classic movie that means a lot to me, and Justin did a fine job. So we'll be back with more strange love stories.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you very much. Please subscribe to the channel and drop a like so we can fight these algorithms and rise to the top. So,
Like, subscribe, and leave a comment
hell
if
yes.
you will. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.